Hi, I'm Paul Edwards. I'm an independently published horror author and, first and foremost, a monster kid. And tonight I'm going to be reading Monster World magazine, issue number 2, from May 1975. And I thought some of you might like to take a look at this magazine with me in case you don't have your own copy of Monster World magazine, issue number 2 from May 1975. And we can see together what kind of monster goodness is in it. I removed the magazine from its protective plastic. We're ready, of course, to look at the cover first. We've got a close-up Vincent Price Unmasked. We've got a cover price of $1.25. You can win our monster contest, The Making of King Kong, The Man of a Thousand Faces, Lon Chaney, that's Lon Chaney Sr., Films to Look For, and Nightmare Theater. All right, looks promising. Cover, got a lot of good images on the cover here. Okay. So let's see what we've got in here. Now these magazines were known for their ads, and they don't disappoint. Already in the back cover, we got super t-shirts, iron-on transfers. For $1, you could send away for one of these. It was sort of like a decal that you could then iron onto a blank t-shirt to create a t-shirt that had, the Rolling Stones logo or Felix the Cat, whatever. And they had a zillion designs. I didn't use these particular ones, but I did use iron-ons in the 70s. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, Captain Kronos is in this. That's good. Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter. All right, let's see what we got. Oh, what a way to start. This was a well-circulated publicity image. It really makes no sense if you look at it. There's King Kong towering over the whole city. Of course, Kong is nowhere near that big. And then he's holding the girl. Obviously, nothing here is in proportion. But it's an effective image, though. Here's the dimensions of Kong. I love it. Okay. Now, this being the 70s, the main source that kids would have for pictures like this would be a magazine like this. King Kong on top of the Empire State Building, swatting away airplanes. This exact image is not just a still frame from the movie. It's a composite. But you didn't care if you were a kid in the 70s. You had a picture of King Kong on top of the Empire State Building, grabbing at airplanes. You were going to cut this out and put it on your bedroom wall. This was a treasure. Oh, well, okay. These are not from the 1933 King Kong, the RKO picture. These are from King Kong versus Godzilla. And all three of these actually look like they are publicity stills, not actual frames from the film. It's they would take, an image from the film of Kong and separately an image of the film from Godzilla, put them together in a picture, and add Godzilla's ray. So this exact image here was not in the movie. It's a composite. But this is the kind of thing that happened in the movie, so it was good advertising. Kong loving the electricity. That was a plot point in the King Kong versus Godzilla. And in the King Kong versus Godzilla, there wasn't a building available that was the Empire State Building for him to climb in Tokyo. So he climbed up the Japanese Parliament building, which was not much bigger than he is. So that was not as impressive. Oh, okay. Films to look for. First of all, House of Whipcord. I'm not really sure that that's an appropriate one for a magazine that's targeted for kids. You could make an argument that it counts as a horror movie. It's mostly like a thriller, but it is not a family-friendly movie. It's not like King Kong. Captain Kronos is a vampire hunter. That was a sort of a horror/action movie. Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell is a Hammer film. That's one of the better Frankenstein ones that they did. And you probably know what Young Frankenstein is. That's the Mel Brooks parody. Oh, nice. Yep, there's the Phantom of the Paradise swinging into action. Okay. Here's a piece on Young Frankenstein. So you probably know this, but in case you don't, Young Frankenstein was a movie that, it was a comedy movie that Mel Brooks released in the 1970s. It's a parody of old horror movies, mainly of 1939's Son of Frankenstein, a movie that Mel Brooks loved when he was a kid. Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell is a Hammer film, and it might have been the 7th of the Hammer Frankenstein movies. Okay, so Peter Cushing plays Dr. Frankenstein in the Hammer Frankenstein series. He plays Baron von Frankenstein, and he is the main bad guy. The main bad guy is not the monster. The real monster is the doctor himself. And here he is wearing a terrible wig as Frankenstein in Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. When you get a movie title like Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, you might think you're getting two monsters. You're not. The Frankenstein is Dr. Frankenstein. The Monster from Hell is the monster that Dr. Frankenstein makes. That's it. There's only one physical monster. So if you are familiar with your Hammer films, I think that this movie makes the most sense if you think of it as being out of order with the others. Because in Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, it was pretty clear that Dr. Frankenstein was going to die at the end of that. He was in a burning house. There didn't seem to be any way out of. And then there was Horror of Frankenstein, which was a different actor playing Dr. Frankenstein in a different continuity. And then we're back to the Peter Cushing Dr. Frankenstein, who has taken over a prison and is doing experiments and making a hodgepodge monster out of body parts of the prisoners. Well, that doesn't make any sense in the continuity of the movies unless you assume that this movie happened somewhere before the events of Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. And then it all makes perfect sense. Then this is just another of the Baron's misadventures. Okay, Captain Kronos. This is sort of like a 1970s version of the Van Helsing movie that made the character into an action hero with Hugh Jackman. It's sort of a 1970s version of that. They intended for there to be more than one movie about Captain Kronos, vampire hunter, although they never wound up making a second one. And this was his sidekick, a professor who was knowledgeable in the occult. There's Captain Kronos standing ready to repel a whole bunch of the misguided townspeople, which he did. If you've never seen Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, it's absolutely worth checking out. I'm sure you can find it easily online. Here, this image is a little confusing. He's using his sword, which is reflective, to shield his own eyes and cast the reflection back at the bad guy. Okay, House of Whipcord is a thriller, and it is about this, it's mainly about this insane older couple who are tired of today's lax moral standards and have taken it upon themselves to imprison what they consider to be wayward young women in an abandoned prison, and to reform them, quote quote. And it has a lot of similarities with women's prison movies, if you're familiar with that subgenre. It's absolutely not a family-friendly movie. There's a lot of nudity in it and some sadism in it. Absolutely not one that you would want kids to watch. And these magazines were targeted primarily to kids, so I'm not crazy about that one being thrown in with the others here. And the time, for example, Escape to Witch Mountain is a Disney movie. In the 70s, the Disney company had a lot of trouble getting their animation done, so they resorted to live action movies. That's why in the 1970s, all of a sudden, there's a ton of live action Disney movies, like Escape to Witch Mountain. And of course, I was a kid in the 70s, so these were the Disney movies I saw in the theater. So with limited availability of monster pictures, something like this, which looks to us like page filler, actually meant a lot to kids. Mini monster posters. And you can see the cut along the dotted line guides here. And you could get 4 monster posters out of this, meaning just pictures you cut out of the magazine. And there's Harryhausen's It Came From Beneath the Sea and Harryhausen's Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. So those two alone make it worthwhile. The problem with doing this is you would be cutting up your magazine. So let's say you wanted the It Came From Beneath the Sea poster. Well, that means you're sacrificing this picture on the next page of Vincent Price, and you got to make a decision. Do you want Vincent Price as Dr. Phibes, and you want to cut out this picture and hang it on your bedroom wall? Or do you want It Came From Beneath the Sea? And it's a brutal choice when you're like 8 years old. Vincent Price Unmasked. This is not an interview with Vincent Price. It's an interview with a guy who wrote a book about Vincent Price. And just in case you're wondering, yes, Vincent Price himself was still alive and well. He lived into the 90s, so, he was available to be interviewed. But we didn't get that far, apparently, in this magazine. Okay. A lot of Price's images are from the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies. From The Raven, this is a comedy horror film, The Raven, from 1963, about a good magician, played by Vincent Price, versus an evil magician, played by Boris Karloff. And that's always good around Halloween time. That's a good one for the kids. You can probably tell, Pit and the Pendulum. Okay. Gosh. Yep. Okay. This is actually from the movie Tales of Terror. There was a sequel, which is an anthology of Edgar Allan Poe stories, and Vincent Price plays a different part in each of them. This is actually from a goofy chapter in that movie, although you wouldn't know it from looking at the picture to see a guy holding a severed head. But they were playing this scene for laughs. Now, as a kid, you didn't have access to this kind of information except in a publication like this. If you wanted to know right now, what movies did Vincent Price do in his life? You could just Google it. Kids didn't have any resource that would tell them that. So this meant a lot to kids. You could study up on what movies Vincent Price had been in. And almost certainly you had never heard of a bunch of them. So if you were a kid in the 70s, you might think, oh, wait a minute, I should see House of Wax, which you definitely should have seen. I should see The 10 Commandments. He is in The 10 Commandments. He didn't just do horror, although he was typecast for horror. The Fly, Return of the Fly, and so forth. By the way, as far as I can remember, this is the only time in movie history where the original was a color film, but the sequel was filmed in black and white. The Fly and Return of the Fly. Price has made over 100 films. This is a list of his most important ones. Well, if they really wanted to fill out pages, they could have put them all. Okay. What have we got here? You can't overlook the ads because now we're starting to get far enough back in the magazine. Sure Shot Rapid Fire Target Gun. Yeah. Try buying that out of a kid's magazine now. Automatic, okay. Mail Room. Huh, okay. Bikini Shorts for Men. That's a little out there. Great solid price. Okay. Monster Mesh Puzzle. We have 2 crossword puzzles here. We're not going to stand here and solve them all, but let's see if you can get a general idea of what kind of things they were looking for. Yeah, some of these I would be lost on. Yep. The House of the Seven Gables, Tower of London. I got those, but some of these I'm not too sure of. The story of the Man of a Thousand Faces. Lon Chaney Sr. was the Man of a Thousand Faces. He was a great actor in the silent film days, and he did his own makeup effects. He was at the forefront of designing practical makeup effects. And it would be appropriate for them to do an article on Lon Chaney in a magazine like this for a couple of reasons. Number one, he absolutely was very important to the history of horror films. So no question that he deserves an article. But as a practical matter, his films were also in the public domain. So they didn't have to pay anybody for these images. And that, I'm sure, is a factor in why Lon Chaney got tons and tons of these magazine covers in the 60s and 70s monster magazines. He deserved them, absolutely, but it also was cheap for the magazine. Probably Lon Chaney's best remembered makeup job is as the Phantom of the Opera. We've seen this image a million times, so we're used to it, but when the film came out back in the 1920s, this was absolutely terrifying to people. And this would be his other biggest makeup achievement, Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the original film version. That's Lon Chaney himself playing both of those roles. Okay. Partial Lon Chaney filmography. Again, kids would have no way of looking this up. Without the internet, unless your local library happened to have a book on Lon Chaney, you'd be out of luck trying to find a filmography. But once you had this, then you could start looking. When your weekly TV listings came out, you could check through, see what magazines were coming up, and what movies were coming up this week, and you could see, if any of the names from the magazine were in the TV listings, and then you could catch a Lon Chaney movie that you otherwise may have missed. Monster contest. Should we enter? It's probably a little too late. This photograph shows 3 of the all-time greats of horror films. Name all 3 stars. I hope you can. If you're watching a video like this, you probably can. Just in case you're stumped, it's Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Boris Karloff. Okay. Monster Comics. Now, this is something you really didn't see too much of in the the main one of these publications, Famous Monsters of Filmland. But some of the other magazines would do this because it was a good way to rack up your page count. And I'm not saying the comics aren't okay. They are okay. But just, it was an easy way to fill up your pages of your magazine. Of course, this is the 1970s, so it had been a while since horror comics like Tales from the Crypt had been on the newsstands. Those were big in the 1950s. So by the time you were a kid in the 1970s, like I was, in your lifetime there hadn't been horror comics on the stand. So getting a comic like this in this kind of magazine was pretty cool. Oh, here's the solutions to the crossword puzzle that we had earlier. All right. Christopher Lee in his heyday in the 70s. Quasimodo's mailbag. Nice. Yeah, now we're starting to get further back, and we're getting, like comic books from this day, we're getting into the far-out ads they had. Look, you can get a stiletto knife. That's great. What could go wrong with that? Nightmare Theater. This was a version of Shock Theater. These were packages of older horror movies, like from the 30s and 40s, that had been marketed to late night television to show, like on a weekly basis. And this was the main way that kids would see older horror movies, was on these late night TV packages. Shock Theater was the main one. And there were all kinds of imitators, and in my TV market in the 70s, the main one was Creature Double Feature on WLVI, Channel 56 on Saturday afternoons. But these were packages of a whole bunch of movies that the studio could rent and air in a regular time slot. And yes, edited. One advantage to these magazines, in addition to letting you know about a movie you might want to catch, is if you didn't end up being able to see the movie, they would give you a summary of it, so you at least have some idea of what happened in it. Monster-sized monsters. Only $1.69 for the 7-foot-tall monster-sized monsters. And in case you're wondering what you got that was 7 feet tall for $1.69, it was a poster that went on the back of your bedroom door. All right. In the 70s, they had these Mego action figures. Mego is a company that still exists, but they got the licenses for both DC and Marvel Comics characters and some other characters. And they made these action figures that were 8 inches tall with cloth clothing, and they were very good quality. I had the Penguin, I had Batman, and Superman, and I know I had Aquaman. I'm not sure if I had Robin. I know I didn't have the Joker, but another boy in the neighborhood had the Joker, so when you played together, you could get the whole cast in there, see? Okay. It's hard to overemphasize just how big a deal Planet of the Apes was in terms of marketing to kids in the 70s. Until Star Wars came out in 1977, Planet of the Apes had the market on kids' toys, action figures, color forms, coloring books, all kinds of goodies. They slapped Planet of the Apes stickers on just about anything and sold it to you. I mean, there was a Planet of the Apes flashlight. So even things that didn't make sense in the context of the movie, like there was a Planet of the Apes airplane. Well, the apes in Planet of the Apes weren't advanced enough to have airplanes, but they sold it to kids anyway. So Planet of the Apes sold tons and tons and tons of merchandise up until Star Wars came out. And then everyone forgot all about Planet of the Apes, and Star Wars ruled supreme. I had both these Batman and Spider-Man rubber figures. Oh my gosh. Classic movie photos. Now, if you wanted movie photos from your favorite movies, you just print them out online. But when you're a kid, how do you get them? You can send away for them. In the 70s, that is, before the internet. Okay, monster fantasy merchandise. You can get stereo records, toy cars. Look, it's the vampire van. The mummy machine, the night crawler. These look like knockoffs of the more famous 1960s ones that are like Frankenstein's Flivver and the Mummy's Chariot. This can be a little confusing to audiences now. Before the big name Pirates of the Caribbean movies with Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean was a property of Disney, and it was a set of models featuring skeletons in pirate settings, and there was a ride at Disney World that was based on it. But there wasn't an actual Pirates of the Caribbean intellectual property that this stuff came from. It's not like there was a movie or a TV show or a book series about the Pirates of the Caribbean. They started with the models and took it from there. Okay. You definitely would have been interested in sending away for your Mad Monsters and their Monster Castle. The Monster Castle is only $18. Well, that was quite a bit 70s money. Oh, you could get, these are mostly old radio broadcasts. You can get a vinyl LP of The Shadow. I have this Superman one. You could get the radio show Suspense with Bela Lugosi doing a guest spot. The Green Hornet, this is probably like maybe 2 episodes on each side of a vinyl album. Flash Gordon, of course. Then you can get posters from Screen Greats. I have the Kong one. Charlie Chaplin, Frankenstein. Not all of these were genre productions, but of course they always included genre ones. Dracula. I'd say of all the posters here, this is probably the best poster. More monster fantasy merchandise. Okay. Monster masks were perennial big sellers. Yep. Okay. Now, are we seeing things? No. It's the exact same ad. This is a full-page ad for these iron-on transfers for a t-shirt. And they already have run this exact same ad on the inside front cover. So I'm not sure they were spending their advertising dollar wisely there. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Here's your order form for Bloody Bargain stuff, including the iron-ons. So I guess they just had nothing else to put on the back of this page, and so they reran that same ad. Okay. Dog tags. I do not know any kid that ordered these. Did you? Let me know in the comments if you ordered any of this stuff. I want to know if any of it was worth getting, whether you were pleased, displeased, or what. And on the back cover, you can send away for images from Night Gallery. Okay, if you're watching a video like this, I'm sure you know what the Twilight Zone TV show was. After Twilight Zone, Rod Serling did another TV show, which was also an anthology series called Night Gallery. But it didn't have science fiction in it. It was just horror and comedy. And he would introduce the stories by means of paintings that were in his Night Gallery. And then they would cut to the episode. So these are paintings that had appeared in the Night Gallery. Okay, and there you have it. That is Monster World magazine from 1975. Listen, if you love classic monsters and vintage horror, if you love truly great films like the films of Lon Chaney and the 1933 King Kong, or if you love bottom-of-the-barrel rubber suit monster movies like King Kong vs. Godzilla, you would love the Mourners Woods book series. This is my self-published book series that's available on Amazon.com. I have different monsters in different books. They can be read in any order. I sell them as cheap as Amazon will let me sell them. 99 cents for an ebook. The paperbacks are currently $9.99, although we recently got a notice that that might go up. But I sell them as cheap as Amazon will let me. And my name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourners Woods books. They are vintage horror for the 21st century, and they're available on Amazon.com. Thanks for spending some time with me hanging out and looking at this great old monster magazine, and I will catch you later. Bye.